Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back. I have a fabulous guest today, Fellowship of Fans, who will introduce himself in a second. I'm very excited for this one because we will talk about maps and speculate a bit what we might see, in the upcoming Amazon show. Fellowship is the expert, basically, on everything Amazon related. He's probably a public enemy number one. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, I'm very excited to have you here and talk about the second age basically. We'll go through the maps and explain you guys what we think can happen. We'll explain the lore a bit, what characters can show up. So yeah, stay tuned. I hope you enjoy this one. Fellowship, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Helen. I really appreciate you firstly letting me come on, and I think this is going to be a really exciting and really interesting video because we're going to be able to look at the map and zoom in at all these places and talk about what we might see at the same time. So I think it's safe to say that we have a lot to talk about and discuss. So yeah.
This might be a long one, people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good. So all of Fellowship's information, his social media, he's very active on there, posting a lot of background information about the show will be linked down below. So give him a follow, give him a like, and yeah, let's talk maps now. Good. So where do we want to start? I would say let's go maybe through the map because there's obviously a lot to see. Amazon gave us it was more than 2 years ago, if you remember, on Twitter when they started posting the first map images and then came out with more and more fleshed out maps and got us all excited. And we knew, okay, so this is definitely second age because it was visible through things like, okay, Numenor was shown, things like Kalinardon, so it wasn't named Rohan yet, and all these little
Indeed.
things. Yeah, so we kind of could, at least understand. So this will be the second age. So that that's a lot of information about the timings. But the thing is, it's literally over 3,000 years that we could see. So I think it would be interesting, first of all, to start. Let's start from the beginning. Obviously, I don't think, and I think you would agree, we will see year one of the second age. Still, because I don't think even if with the show, I don't know how many seasons have they confirmed. Do you know that?
It's 5 seasons confirmed so far. So it looks like the show ran for
Okay.
5 seasons.
Yeah. But still, the thing is that
Mm-hmm.
is still a lot of, yes, 5 seasons, but can we see everything in 5 seasons? So I don't think so. You can't cover 3,000 years in five
Yeah, I
seasons.
agree.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so let's start maybe with Linden because Linden was founded. So the second age started basically after the War of Wrath, after Morgoth, the baddie of the story, was chained again, was jailed again, and new players come into the game, and Linden was founded. And maybe if we go to the map, you can see,
Yep.
there is Forlinden and Harlinden. And what do you? I do think this is a very important area, because we have Gil-galad there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Gil-galad is one and will be one of the most important and one of the key players, I do think, in the show. He was also the longest reigning High King, also the last reigning High King of the Noldor. So, what is your guess on, first of all, Linden? What will we see, and Gil-galad? What do we know?
Mm-hmm. And I think you've mentioned the two main things that we can take from Linden is firstly Gil-galad, who I'll get onto in a second. But I think the region, I'm not the region, but Mithlond as well, because we know that first of all, that's where Círdan the shipwright resided
Yes.
for, and also the fact that I know we're jumping at the start, but if we jump on later on, we see that a lot of the early communication between Numenor and Middle Earth was
Yeah.
towards Mithlond, etc. Through I
Yes.
think a letter Ace. I've forgotten the exact date, but a letter to thing think it was Dualdarion as well. So
Yeah, from Tar-Meneldor. So
yeah,
that was
Tom
the fifth
Nelson.
king
Mm-hmm.
of Numenor, and he got a letter from Gil-galad to, he asked for aid basically, from the Numenorians against Sauron or against
Mm-hmm.
something evil arising again.
Yeah, and I think that was around 860 something around the second age. So that is a bit forward from when we're
Mhm.
starting off on, but nonetheless, of course, when we go, I think another reason why we might think maybe Mythlond might be an interesting part is because of course later on the Grey Havens linked to the movies as well. That could be an
Yeah,
interesting thing.
yeah,
People who might have just watched the movies might come back and think, oh, I remember that from the end of the Return of the King.
yes,
That's quite
yeah,
interesting. But of course,
yeah,
there's more than just that, and we will look into that. But then,
yeah,
secondly, I think who you correctly mentioned is Gilgalad the High King,
mhm,
and I think Gilgalad has a really, I think, an important part to play in this
mm,
show,
mm.
and I think one thing that I've never really known though is where specifically in Linden is this high sea. I'm not sure,
It's
like
not meant. It's not meant.
Helen.
It's not
Yeah, I
mentioned.
don't think.
No, no.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Harlingen, as far as I remembered, so the thing is, his realm was, and this is really interesting, a bit of a refugee, right? It was like a
Yeah,
refugee camp because the thing is, Doriath fell after the first age. Doriath did fall, so the world
yeah.
also changed, and then it came to pass that a lot of the people who survived Doriath, a part of them went to Greenwood, right? And those became the people of Thranduil, basically, and Orofer. But those were also survivors of Doria, so they went east. But a lot of them also went west, basically, to Linden and Harlinden. And I think, as far as I remember, a lot of the Teleri elves, basically, or Sindar elves from
Mm-hmm.
Beleriand, lived in Harlinden, so a bit south. And so I do think, therefore, Gilgalad was above them in the area somewhere there, because we know, Teleri and Noldor, as I said, Gilgalad is a Noldor prince, right? And they didn't, due to things happening that happened in the past, they didn't really like each other, and Sindar and Teleri elves didn't want to be ruled by a Noldor king. They refused that. Still, they wanted to be safe. So it was actually, and I hope we will see that in the show. This rising tension of people that fled their land, that literally drowned, and most of their people died, and they had to flee here and there, and then they had to live under the high kingship of somebody like Gil-galad. And I think this will be really interesting because
Mm-hmm.
later on, things like with Thranduil's father, you learn he didn't want to be ruled by him, even as an army commander. And this is why actually Thranduil's father later on dies in the War of the Last
Lost
Alliance. So,
lights, yeah.
yeah, so I think this will be really cool how they portray this, tension between the Sindar elves and the reigning king in Linden, Gil-galad. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that would, if we are going to see the War, of the Last Alliance in season 5, if that is
yeah,
where the Amazon show is going to finish, I think that
yeah,
would explain quite well to the audience and to the viewer why, for example, Orifer had his separate, he had
yeah,
almost like a separate contingent, a separate army, even though, so we had Gilgalad on one side, and then we had separate. We of course know that didn't end quite well for him in the end. Maybe
no,
they could have maybe potentially cooperated if, but like, I think was he lost like 2/3 of
yes,
it was just, and I
yeah.
think explaining that, I know we keep on jumping back and forth, but then
Mm,
later on, as you explaining, that could be a good way to explain the differences and a potent. So yeah, I think
yeah.
that, yeah,
And I,
gone.
and I do think Gil-galad is actually, and I'm interested in his portrayal, but he is a wise king. He's a good king. You can see that he's a wise king with him, what you mentioned, the letter. So
Yeah.
literally right from the get-go, because a lot of Sauron, he's so clever. This is his power. He is the one who can influence the mind, right? He's whispering in people's ears. He's influencing everybody. He turned 9 mortal, important, powerful men to become the Nazgul. He turned the king of Numenor Numenor, one of the most powerful people on earth. So he's capable of all that, but he never, not with Gil-galad.
Yeah,
So um,
rejected.
exactly. So, and
Yeah.
also Galadriel. So Gil-galad and
Oh
Galadriel.
yeah.
And I do think he's
Hmm.
such a wise ruler. And this tension of the Sindar living there and him being, actually a good king, a wise king, a king who wanted to take care of his people. And I think, yeah, this War of the Last Alliance, then I agree with you. I think in season 5, I think the whole thing will end where the Lord of the Ring movie started. So you have basically,
Hmm.
this whole, yeah, and that would be a beautiful ending, wouldn't it? So if
Yeah.
you exactly end where we all learned how it began for us. So yeah.
Indeed, it would be quite fitting. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I think another thing that someone mentioned to me once, just in conversation, is
Mhm.
it was something when we were talking about Gilgalad, is that often in television shows and movies, you don't really it's a different take on it. You don't really look at the king that much. You normally look at
Yeah.
the people closer to the king. And I think,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
example, like Game of Thrones was a good example. I think at the
Yeah.
start, you look at everyone around the king, and then
Yeah.
not actually the king itself. But I think with Gilgalad, even though that is true, it is different to an extent as well.
Yeah.
And but talking about close to the
The
king and
king.
Gilgalad, we
Yeah.
have, of course, in Linden at the time of the start of the second age, we have Elrond, right?
Yes.
Or are we jumping too far? Do we have to carry on with the chronology?
Let's talk because you mentioned him, and then let's go to Rivendell, which yes. So let's talk maybe about Círdan because you
Perfect.
know more than I do. Obviously, you will, but
Mhm.
Círdan is such an important character, and I think I made a video, not about Círdan, but I talked about his importance. And the thing is, we just know him from the movies as a teeny tiny, sub character. But first of all, my guess is, and let me know if you would agree. So this dude has literally a beard, right?
Mhm.
And we know elves don't have beards.
Yep.
So I really do think, but we know elves age, right? And I
Yep.
do think Círdan is one of the 144 OG elves. So what does that mean? So there were 144 elves that awoke in pairs. And they were the Noldor, Teleri, and Vanyar, basically the three tribes. Yes, and I do think that Círdan is one of the 144, and I do think so. Therefore, he has seen it all.
Yeah.
Obviously, not everything. The elves were not born right at the beginning of days, no, but pretty early on. And he never made it, and we know that at least. So his story starts basically with the Teleri migrating. So he made it from Cuivienen to basically, well, to the havens, right? To Linden,
Yep.
and where he lived. I think he lived further down as well. I forgot the name now. Sorry, people, but he moved a bit because where Earendil and Elwing lived after the fall of Doriath, I think he lived there and then he migrated to Linden. But anyway, I think his role is so important and he's so wise because you were talking about counselors of the king,
Yep.
and he has the role also of giving Gandalf the ring, right? We won't see that is not second age.
Nope.
Still, this elf has a lot to tell, is very wise, and I do think he will be one of the antagonists of Anatar because Galadriel, they must feel they are old, they are wise. I think this is how they will be portrayed, and I do think he must know something is off. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
I think that's a really good presumption because I think the three people we mentioned, which
Mhm.
were well, you mentioned that was I think it was Gilgalad, Galadriel, and Círdan. I think were
Yep.
those the three that got the three elven rings as well. So
Yes.
so I think it fits quite well in that sense, anyways. But I
Yeah.
think perfect because Anatar comes, we've got this Lord of Gifts. Who's this guy? And then comes and then just gets completely. He couldn't even meet Gilgalad, I don't think. And I think you're I think it's interesting from your this little this theory that having maybe Círdan yeah, Círdan just go at Anatar like that. And I think
Mm.
it seems like just maybe everyone from Linden in general just be like, just no, go away. And I think another
Yeah.
interesting thing that came into my head, just in passing when you were talking, is that in Linden we have all these just wise people, and
Yeah.
we've got Gilgalad, we have the Elrond as more an apprentice role, but
Yes.
still a good healer, and
Yeah.
then we have Kurdan. Then I'm sure in
Yeah.
the when to all the new viewers watching the show, then you just do the juxtaposition all the way to Region and Nostinatil, and then you've just got Celebrimbo, you've got the
Yeah.
Great Diamond, then everyone just
Yeah.
just going crazy on that side. And I think that'll
Yeah.
just be just a fine little thing that came into my head as well, just
Yeah.
showing
Yeah.
the juxtaposition between the
Totally.
two places. Yeah.
I really think you're completely spot on. I really think you have all, because Galadriel was also in Linden for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Her and Gilgalad are related, right? Um, Not sure how, because there are different versions Tolkien gave us.
Yeah,
Christopher said
always.
it's another. Anyway, however, he is, yes, he is a Noldor prince, but he's not from the line of Fëanor, and this is the important thing. He is either from Fingolfin or Finarfin's line, so either really really close related to Galadriel, or from her uncle's side, basically from Fingolfin. So Finarfin was Galadriel's father, and Fingolfin was Galadriel's uncle. There were two brothers, basically, and the stepbrothers of Fëanor. And Celebrimbor is from that cursed line of the
The Fair
Fëanorians. And
Northern. Yeah.
and I really think, and this plays out in Linden and Eregion, exactly what you say. Eregion
Yeah.
is full of Noldor who are ruled basically by Celebrimbor, the last living descendant of Fëanor. And what did Fëanor do? He created the Silmarils. They were responsible for a lot of bad things that happened in the First Age and the age before. And then Celebrimbor, his last living descendant, created more objects of, this.
It's in the family. That's one thing to say.
It's in the family, yeah. But
Yep.
I really like, because you can see the elves are not, and I really do think you will see, I don't think it's a love triangle per se, what we will see with the whole Galadriel and Celebrimbor thingy. But I do think
No,
there
no.
will be tension, and this is interesting, and keep that in mind, people. They are from two, so the lines of the Noldor split up. From the House of Galadriel and Celebrimbor, and well, they were at once enemies, and I think Eregion and Linden, maybe, that will be played out as well there. So you have,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, the wise, the people who see through Anatar, and then you have Eregion, who are like, yay, okay, bring me wisdom, let me, teach me how to forge
Yeah.
rings.
Mm-hmm. And I think, of course, I think you've perfectly put and given just the context around seeing the different places, and I can't wait to see in the show, just seeing it. It's just the difference between
Yeah.
the two. But I think
Yeah.
I think I left Kurdan quite a bit back with the original question. But I
Hmm.
think another interesting thing about Kurdan in the sense is that when a lot of the time the Numenorians came to Middle Earth and more to the
Yeah.
West Coast, they
Yeah.
normally mostly meet Círdan. And
Yes.
for example, that happened during when a contingency force came to Mithlond to
Mhm.
help
Yeah.
the Linden hold their lines against Sauron's forces during the
Yeah.
War of the Elves. And Sauron, of course, earlier
Yeah.
um um I keep forget Aldarion. There we go, Aldarion.
Aldarion. Yeah. Mhm.
I
Yeah.
keep on getting confused Aldarion and Narion. It just always
Oh,
remind them two.
yes.
It's just crazy.
Yes.
It's so
No,
far
yeah.
apart as well.
Aldarion is basically the sixth
Yeah.
king. Yeah, yeah.
And
Um,
then Narion's he's a few thousand years later, but
he's a
we
bit
don't
later,
really,
yes.
yeah, we not for quite a while. But I think when of course I think Eldarion and Rendis will be an interesting to talk about later on if we're
Oh,
going to see them.
yes.
But I
Yeah.
think
Do you think
Lord
we'll
the
get a flashback? Do you think we will get a flashback? Because the thing
ooh,
is, if they explain the law, they need to go back in because we will get to Numenor in a bit, but they need to explain the history of Numenor. So there might
yeah.
be flashbacks, and I do think I remember there was a report around a year ago. So there was or maybe not a year ago. I don't even remember. There was, a report of somebody seeing, I'm not a spoilery channel, but that stuck in my mind of a woman at a harbor, a location, jumping in that was filmed apparently, or somebody saw that or whatever, and she jumped into the water and there were ships and whatnot. So how did his wife Erendis, you just mentioned her, how did she
Yeah,
die? She threw herself in the water.
tough into the water indeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
So we could have a flashback to that because he was very important to the law. Aldarion not just, was one, he started colonizing Middle Earth
Yeah, that's
around.
vital.
Yeah, so he founded a lot of the cities we will then see in the show. He was one of the founders. He founded the Guild of Mariners. I'm totally into this guild thingy. When we talk about
Yeah.
Eregion, you mentioned the Gwaith Mirdain, probably butchering this, sorry. And there was also a guild in Numenor building ships. And he founded that. So that is so Guild of Venturers, I think it was called. So that is really interesting. And they, cut down woods in Middle Earth because the king
Yeah.
forbade it. And it's a really good and rich story. So maybe we'll get a flashback.
And if you don't mind me adding on, I think using your logic, and I think which is really 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 interesting, because in one of my recent videos I talked about it myself, but using what you said about doing the flashbacks and trying to show Numenor and the lore and how it was created, I think in the
Yeah,
decision Elrond and Elros had to make at the end of the first age, it
yeah,
does so many good things. It just shows the character moment, the decisive moment for
yeah,
Elrond in his early years, and it gives context to who the character is now going into the
yeah,
second age. But
yeah,
also, hand in hand, describes and shows how Numenor was founded. We have Elros; he chose
yeah,
to be immortal.
yeah,
Then later on, they find what Numenor was given, and then I think 32 he was crowned. 32 the second age, he was
yeah,
initially crowned first king of Numenor. So hand in hand, that does two things, and going along the line of, for example, having those flashbacks, maybe you might be seeing a few of more. Maybe we have Eldarin and Rendis, and we also have
yeah.
maybe just Elrond and Elwas and that decision they had to make.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah, that would be beautiful because yes, it
Hmm.
it is important to the story, and I think obviously Elrond needs to mention his brother once, right?
Yeah, one hundred
Because
percent.
we will see Numenor, so he will say, these are the people of my brother. Basically, this is the line of my brother, and we know that because he fostered Aragon, and he's even mentioning it. So that I think that's a given that we will have flashbacks. And there were important moments in Numenor. Again, I don't think we will see the whole history, but there were important. So it's not just Ar-Pharazôn catching Sauron. There were different defining moments of time for Numenor. So just
Yeah.
one last thing about Círdan, which came to me when we were speaking. I would find it very fascinating. Think about what happened at the end of the Second Age. So Arnor and Gondor were founded after Numenor drowned. And who is that? Those are, the descendants also of Elrond. So basically the goodies from Numenor, they
Yeah.
made it
The
out of
faithful,
Numenor, right?
I
The
think. Yeah.
faithful, exactly,
Yeah.
yes. So that is the line where Aragon is from, right? Those are the people like Elendil, all these people, they stem from that line. And they come also back to Middle Earth. I really do think Círdan will, if they show this in season 5 or wherever, because this is just before the War of the Last Alliance, right?
Yeah.
So I do think they might show them founding Anor and Gondor and arriving in Middle Earth, and Círdan also maybe being a mentor to them, because this is what you said. They were in contact, and the Havens were, and Círdan's people were basically like like the back and forth plays. So he knew the Numenorians very well. He taught them, it is said in the Silmarillion, he taught them a lot about shipbuilding and everything. So why wouldn't he teach and be an advisor, to Anor and Gondor later on, to the
Yeah.
founders? That could be also really interesting, that he also interacts with the remainers of Numenor, the faithful ones.
Yeah, and I think luckily for everyone at home, the on the maps that were released, there were a few versions, and I've got up well, that's up on screen right now is one that shows us Gilead and Minas Anor as well, Minas Ithil, all on screen, and they were shown in the maps as well. So it's interesting
Yeah.
to see that the how interesting and crucial the formation of
Yes.
these two managed kingdoms will be in the show,
Yeah.
and of course,
Yes.
as you've mentioned, Helen, the role Kurdan will have to play in that as well. So
Yeah.
yeah. So let me just quickly zoom back into the the other map now. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. So I think we covered Linden pretty well.
yeah.
So do you want to jump to Rivendell now, maybe? Rivendell was actually founded pretty late on in the second age, or middle, let's say in the middle of the second age, around 1600, 1700 ish. And yeah, maybe do you want to explain how he came from Linden and his
hmm
relationship with Gil-galad, and then going and founding Rivendell?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I'd love to get into that. And firstly, just for people watching at home on the map, we are talking about Rivendell, but I did say Melagis, but that's just another name for Rivendell. So what's
Yes,
on
in
screen right
Gladwald.
now? That forested area, that is it. And I think the formation of Linden, because we've been talking about a lot of formations of places in the show
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
So that's just another thought that's come to mind. But then we have of course the in the mid second age, the main thing is the war of the elves and Sauron, and
yeah,
we have a region. We've got another place that we're going to mention later on. I think let's safe to say they get pretty much decimated.
yeah,
Sauron comes with these armies. Celebrimbo did not want to give up the location of the rings. Okay,
yeah,
then Sauron's like, fine, if you don't want to give up the rings,
yeah,
looks like I'll do it myself. And then of
yeah.
course for Celebrimbo, that he ends up on a banner, etc., etc. So
Mm,
maybe just same like Arthur earlier. Some not some we will be not be seeing we will be seeing in fact some not good endings for some characters. Actually, that is, do we come that as spoilers? Referencing that, but I'm sure everyone watching would already know that. So I think
yeah,
that is fine.
fine.
But yeah,
If
as
not,
a
it's your
someone,
own fault,
yeah,
people.
yeah,
Who cares?
someone's watching right now going, "Oh no, oh Celebrimbo dies." But sorry by the way. But anyways, so and then moving along, we have so we the War of the Elves and Sauron. So then
Yes,
Gilgalad from Linden, what he did say, okay, I see what's happening. If a region falls and we don't help, what's left? The Elvish kingdom left is Linden, and we
yeah,
already know that. Anyways, the lines were starting to get attacked. There was some help from the Numenorians. So then,
yeah,
and then Gilgalad said, okay, Elrond, you're effectively at this point, we're in the mid second age, you're my co-commander. Do you want
yeah,
you will lead a separate force that will go down and try to give aid to Austin Hill. I think that was
yeah,
the last standing place at that point,
yeah,
and the Region Elves. And
yeah.
they were like, okay. And then he was like, sure. Then he went down, and then pretty much he was too late. And I think,
Mm,
and then at this point, this is before the Numenorians came to save
yes,
the day, basically.
yeah,
So
yeah,
what they had to do, the company they settled, and that is effectively in the ravine. That is where the formation of Imladris and Rivendell happened. And I
yes,
think
exactly.
So yeah, and a bit really, and I think the thing I like about that so much is because happening while this whole massive, large scale war is going on, you still got the Numenorians coming. We still got,
Yeah,
for example, the lines of Linden still being held, and just about holding. And you've still got
yeah,
we've still got all the way in the region. You've got Celebrimbo. Then he's probably in a banner somewhere, anyways. But
yeah,
so yeah, we got all these separate things. Then we still got the formation of
yeah.
Rivendell as well. So yeah, that's
And
how
I
it is.
and I do think this is a super interesting time, because I do think this is literally Sauron's height of power, because he
Indeed.
he just created the rings. And the thing is, how it's very obscure, and Tolkien never says, he was, his power is this and this and this. But magic in Tolkien's world is very vague still. I do
Yeah.
think him pouring all these evil and malice and everything into his ring, into these rings, then him in 1500, Celebrimbor created the other, or the dwarven ring, the ring for the elves, and the
Yeah.
ring for
All the
men,
other
right?
ones. Yeah.
Exactly. And then in 1600, so 100 years later, Sauron created the One Ring. And I really do think at this point, he was at the height of his power. He already had Barad-dûr. He created Barad-dûr, I think around 1000. So he had his
1,000.
fortress. Yeah, he had his
It
fortress.
was. Yeah. Sorry, go
Mhm.
on.
No, he had his fortress. He created the ring. This was Sauron's time, right? So it is no, that Elrond and all the elves couldn't, were basically slain, or overthrown, and couldn't win against him. Is no doesn't come by surprise. It doesn't surprise me, because this was the height of his power.
Indeed, and I just think again, yeah, Sauron's got everything going for him, and he's
Mm.
exactly in a Ned way, just burning down these forests. And I think this
Yes,
is
yes,
what I think another crucial point that comes from this. This is when Sauron's true hatred of the Númenóreans begin,
yes,
from
yes,
such an advantage in
yeah,
Middle Earth, and then just coming up the Gwotlows, just I think
yeah,
Kiriata and just a Númenórean fleet after fleet just coming, going up Gwotlow, and then
yeah,
pretty much
yeah,
routing his forces.
yeah,
He then just straight away just absolutely just gets destroyed, and then
yeah,
um just goes back, has to retreat back to Mordor again, and I
yeah,
think and has to regroup for many centuries to come.
yeah, yeah.
And I
Hmm?
yeah, go on.
No, no.
Yeah, I just was just going to say, I think just an overall point is that I think once we get into this period of the show, or the Amazon show,
Mhm.
it just seems like there's going to be so many different things just happening at
Yeah,
once. You've got,
yeah,
I've mentioned earlier, you've got Elrond, what's happening with him, where's his force going? We've got the
mm,
Númenóreans, are they going to come and help? Are they going to Talminaste? Are they going to help? Are they going to come save the day?
yeah,
Linden, what's happening there? The Númenórean fleet, the Númenórean backup that's already there. Are their lines going to hold? Sauron, he's just running down, just running through a region. And also
yeah.
we've got of course we've got in Khazad-dûm, we've got the dwarves just shutting the
Yes.
doors of Durin and just hiding in
Yeah,
there, basically from them
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
So
yeah,
on their part as well. So I
yeah,
think just overall in this part of the show is going to be really, really not just not action, but a lot of events happening at once.
yeah.
And it's going to be really interesting to see how the showrunners be able to balance all that as well.
Yes, because you can't show just battles, but there will be a lot of battles. I really do think,
Yeah.
before all these events at the mid of the Second Age, where there were a lot of wars before the War of the Last Alliance, because a lot of people don't know that there were, as you just mentioned, a lot did happen. It was very peaceful for a long time at the beginning of the Second Age, after Beleriand fall, after the War of Wrath. Then it was peaceful, but then it slowly creeped up, and then you have the combination in this mid second age battles that are happening. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned the dwarfs. Let's maybe go to the dwarfs for a little bit. So the
Yeah.
dwarfs from the Blue Mountains, and if you now can show maybe the route they took, they came from the Blue Mountains and they migrated to Khazad-dûm. So they founded Khazad-dûm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you? Will we see this? Will we see? I mean, this is a running joke. And Fellowship knows this, as the boys are always making fun of me because
Oh
I'm
yeah.
going.
Yeah.
you know.
It just
I'm
goes
not.
on to every stream. You're gonna have just you have to show your hatred for the dwarfs.
I know this is what I'm known for. No, I
Mm,
don't. So listen, people. I like the dwarves of Belagos in the first age. With Azagal, their leader. The dwarves with the iron masks that are fighting Glaurung. This is one of the most epic scenes, and one
mhm,
day I want to
mhm.
see that on film as well. But I don't hate dwarves. I'm just not interested as much, in the dwarf. And you can't be interested in everything. So I just want to clear this up. All my dwarf hate is mainly, me trying to be a bit funny and playing with
Yeah.
this. But
Well, we are 35 minutes in. First time mentioning dwarves, but I'm only kidding.
try not to mention them. No, so dwarfs. I'm pretty sure. I think it's confirmed, kind of, right? We will see
Yeah,
dwarfs.
yeah.
And yeah, yeah. Okay.
So, and do you want me to run through some of
Yes.
the leaks? So, yeah. So
I don't want
things
to
that
talk about them.
you don't want to talk about them.
No, I don't want to mention it. You do.
Okay. Okay, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. So basically, from Khazad-dûm, well, presumably Khazad-dûm,
Yeah.
because unless we're going more flashbacks, which this just seems like a show for late. Might as well just done the first but that's beside the point if we're getting that many flashbacks. But
Yeah.
anyways, um, we've got I think we have the him falling down. We've got we've got a few an unpub. I think it's a minor detail, but is quite important. I think for the sense that looks like fun. It seems as well, and then we've got the king falling down
I think
as
you're
well.
cut.
This
Yeah,
something.
you're cutting off a little bit. But that might be better now. Yeah, I think it's better now. Oh, good.
Do you want me to go over that again then?
Yes, please. You were
Sure,
cut
sure.
out. I don't know.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just test checking. Is it better now?
Yes. Perfect.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, let's go for it then. Okay, so the leaks from of what Helen does not want to talk about, so it looks like I'll have the job of doing that. Is that so? We've got this king, and he seems like he's in a bit of a struggle and falls down a mine shaft. And that,
Oh, okay.
so we've got that, and then second thing is that on the Dwarven sets, one of the main things is an underground pub, which is quite.
That's so cool.
Yep, it's a. I think they are going to be having a lot of fun in
Yeah.
and of course we have one that dwarves so far is Owain Arthur, but I won't get into nitty gritty of it too much. But I think the main thing to take away from this is that this is the first time on screen, or and then we're going to be seeing, and when they aren't, for example, and this is an adaptation as well, of course, with the Hobbit, they are going to reclaim their homeland. Of
Yeah.
course, as we see in Lord of the Rings, they are
Yeah.
trying to reclaim Moria, but this is the time where they are all just settled for a time being. Hence, for example, me having fun at the um
Yeah.
having fun at the dwarven pubs as well, which I can't wait to see, and that does give a
Same.
lot of Belagost vibes.
Yeah. It does.
But that's the main thing to take away with the dwarves in the show is that we are going to see maybe a bit of a difference in them in the fact that we are going to see them in their home
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah.
And another thing specifically Khazad-dûm, we got the interaction with Ostinati with that
Yes.
trade, and actually on the map it shows you this kind of trade
There's a
route between
trail.
Austin,
Yeah.
yeah, trail from Ostinati all the way
Yeah.
to Khazad-dûm,
Yeah.
and I think we of course have Celebrimbor, Navi, their story. It'd be interesting to see. I hope that we do see that in the show because it
Yes.
is
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
we got them
Yeah.
coming together,
Yeah. So they, for the people who don't know, they built the
building the
gates of
doors of Jir.
Moria.
I think
Yes. Yeah.
gates, yeah, so many things, and I think the main thing to take from that is the collaboration between the dwarves and the elves as well, and
Yeah.
showing for time a period of harmony for a bit as well
Yeah.
in in Eregion, and despite all the chaos that would soon come later on,
I
of
know,
course.
but why is that? Because they are Noldor. So the
Hmm.
elves in Eregion are Noldor, and Noldor are also, the craftsmen basically of the elves. So they have a lot in common with the dwarves. So therefore, they do get along really well. And even like you mentioned, Elrond, he got also saved by the dwarves of Khazad-dûm in one of these battles, who did help them at one point and then went back to Moria and shut the doors. But before that, they did help them. So Elrond could escape. So obviously, Elrond is thankful to these dwarves. But Teleri and other elves, they just don't get a lot like Thranduil's people. Because why? His city where he's from, his kingdom, Doriath, did fall partly. They killed the dwarves, killed his king. They killed King Thingol. So parts of the elves don't get along with dwarves due to other reasons, right? But these people, like the Noldor princes and the houses of the Noldor, they have a lot in common with the dwarves. And they had trade routes and what you said, and this is different folks of elves and different, like interact differently with dwarves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, of course, I think I've mentioned a few times the trade routes as well, and I think you've gone as usual into great detail around the difference between the place and the relationship they do have the dwarves, and it's funny that in the end, when the Eregio needed the most, or as Austinity needed the most, the dwarves just seal the gates, they seal their doors, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes
Yeah,
on after that as well, and
yeah,
how
yeah,
they
you're
take
right.
that really. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where was Khazad-dûm when Eregion fell?
Maybe that would be the new meme.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would love that. Make it happen. Good.
indeed.
Okay, so dwarves. Um,
You,
then what? Do you want
that's
to talk more about dwarves? I
no,
mean,
I'm
we
still
can.
like, I just feel your disgust for them. Yeah,
It's not discussed. Anyway,
not
people.
disgust. I'm joking.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay, so let's maybe talk about. I mean, we covered Rivendell. Let's maybe. Do we want to go to Numenor for a bit? Because this
Mm-hmm.
is, it started. This is basically the age of Numenor. Because as I very often say, my feeling is, the first age is the age of elves. Yes, you have stories with Turin Turamba and Tuor coming to Gondolin. There are some humans, Hurin, there are some humans who are important in the first age, yes, but it's not the age of men. The age of
Right.
men comes in the second age, starts in the second age, and they more and more they become more and more important. And you see that culminating in the third age, where literally, I don't know who says it, Elrond, I don't know who, somebody says even the age of the kings now, but men,
Yeah.
kings of men has come now, and the elves are literally leaving. So this is the second age is a time in between. You have still the elves still have a job to do and fulfill in Middle Earth, but you slowly see, the importance of men, and they are rising. So they have a new kingdom, and I find Numenor so fascinating, and we can talk about this for
Yeah.
18 hours, but we don't
Yeah.
have the time. But maybe let's just sum it up. So, Numenor was, you said it in the beginning, Numenor was founded literally in year 32. And it was inhabited very over time, even, but there were, I think, 6 or 9. I always get confused by that number, ships of men. So, one of the ships was the ship of Elrond's twin
Yeah. There were.
brother.
Yes, I gone. Yep.
Yeah, a twin brother, Elros, and he was the first king of Numenor who founded then the kingship of.
Yeah.
Later there will be 25 kings, that will be the last king, the 25th, until the drowning, almost at the end of the age. So Numenor existed almost all the time from beginning to end of the second age. So this is in a way the age of Numenor, and I do think, because we won't have many elves. Yes, there were elves in Numenor, but this will be the main focus will be men and the downfall of men. I do think in the beginning we will see a very blissful Numenor, because this is how it started out. This was basically a gift from the gods or the demigods or god to men for aiding in the war of wrath, in defeating evil, right? And so this island was given to them. It was special. This more things grew. It was, everything was better in Numenor, basically. So you must imagine the people living in Middle Earth were basically in the Dark Ages, and Numenor is like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700 years ahead of them. This is how it must be portrayed, because it's the truth, right? They had somewhat of industrialization. They had, the ships being built. They had big and gigantic cities. Then they came back to Middle Earth and taught the people who basically are said to have lived in darkness. And I really want to see that play out in the show. The colonization going wrong, because in the beginning it was good what they did, getting back in contact with their homeland, basically. But then, kings became more and more became greedier. The shadow fell on Numenor.
Mhm.
And debauchery and the downfall started early on. It was not 2, 3, 4, 5 years before the downfall. That was way earlier. It started to go sour. And I want to have your opinion on what will we see. We talked about the kings and events, and we will see, but what do you think is important for the beginning of the show to show in Numenor? Cities, say, what do you want to see of Numenor? What is important?
I think without a doubt, just from the marketing as well, how big Numenor is going to be in
Yeah,
how a prevalent part is going to be, and
yeah.
I and I think from what we will see from the start, what I want to see, I think they are two different things. But I don't think going into Numenor too early on. I know, of course, maybe because
Mhm.
what if you show Numenor in a just fully peaceful? We got this first few kings,
Yeah,
Tarvadamir,
nothing
um,
happened.
yeah, nothing. Is it? Yeah, that you put it actually really well. Nothing really happens. Is it worthy of
No.
this billion-dollar show just to show a peaceful Numenor? You've got the rights to the second age. You want to use them and you want to show the best things that you can. And I think that really starts to pick up around Meneldo and
Yeah,
Aldarion, you're going on to that. And
yeah.
I think it mostly aligns with when we want to see the show starting. And I
Mhm.
think the best place to do it is maybe, I think regarding Numenor itself, I think having an established Numenor and then
Mm.
maybe through, as you said, we mentioned earlier, flashbacks going
Yeah,
further back in time,
yeah,
just to showing how it's founded. For example, you could use that Elrond establishing scene as well, and then maybe
yeah.
Eldari and Arendis, as you mentioned as well. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, and I think from Numenor itself, the island, of
Mhm.
course, we have. I think we've got Armenelos. That's the basically the capital
Capital.
city
Yeah,
of
it's in the
Numenor,
middle. It's in
right
the
in the
middle.
middle. But and then much more in the middle is, I always get a pronunciation of this wrong, so I'm sorry, Meneltama, the mountain that it's basically a sacred place for the Numenorians as well. So
Yes.
I think for all the other places as well in Numenor, of course, on each it's the star, it's a star shape. There are
Mm.
regions and place cities around, and
Yeah.
you got the Lords of Andunai as well. That comes in more, of course,
Mhm.
later on. But I think starting off maybe Armenelos, show a bit of Meneltama, maybe
Yeah.
Romena, but just
Yeah.
showing those, get that from the show, get that show it, establish it to the viewer, and then maybe gradually throughout the seasons you go, maybe
Yeah.
start season three. These shows do that sometimes. You just start in a new place. You just start in a new place at the start of the
Yeah.
next season, and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, we're still in the same place, but this is a new place, and maybe
Oh, you need
grad.
story building. You need world building, right? You can't.
World
Yeah. Yeah.
building, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think gradually doing it with Numenor makes sense. And I think that's more the geography and the actual place
Yeah.
code. But I
Yeah.
can't wait to see just our Menelaus, just seeing the
Yeah.
Numenorian city. And also another thing is the progression of Numenor throughout the years, if we are going to see the entire second
Yes.
age.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but then, of course, what other thing? If you want to jump at the 3,000 years, we can go, of course,
Mm.
to that temple, Melkor worshipping temple. I'd love to see that. Just
Yeah.
seeing. these
Yeah.
twisted people. Okay, this sounds like I'm a bit of a psychopath, but I promise I'm not. It just it sounds like it's just that just seeing these people getting corrupted by this
Yeah.
thing and just worshipping. But the main thing I'm trying to go to, the real thing you can do with Numenor is the politics within it. And I
Yes.
think that's the best thing you can, well, not the best, but that's of course you know the ships and the
Yeah.
sea and everything. But
Yeah.
that's the best
Yeah.
aspect. Like you can do it with Middle Earth, you know, Eregion, Linden, court
Yeah.
politics.
Yeah.
For example, you mentioned it right at the start of the video. We have in Linden who is around Gilgalad. You have Kurd and you have Elrond, Galadriel for some parts as well.
Yeah.
Then you've got everyone moving over, Orif, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But Numenor, you can fully go into it, and I've
Yeah.
always thought that this is just speculation of mine. You know, there's random theories we make up that maybe in whenever we see this Numenor at the start, whenever we see Numenor, I'm not sure when exactly we'll see the start of Numenor on the show where
Yeah.
Numenor will start, but maybe having you know the three you know the ring race, the three that were from Numenor,
Mhm.
maybe have them originally ingrained into the cool politics of Numenor. I know one of them
Yes.
was a sorcerer, one of them was a, a quite a wealthy lord. So maybe have them
Yeah.
going into the politics of just the courtside politics of Numenor. Then
Yes.
slowly, then you'll see the corruption.
Yeah.
Sauron comes, and I think, but then I think the only problem there is that you can't really keep them for you can't keep them alive for like 1,000 years, which is
No, that's the
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
that's the
Men die,
stumbling
even
block.
Numenorians. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
that's
So
the
you will.
stumbling block.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So you will, when you get used to a character, then he will most likely die after a few episodes, because you need to also show the progression of the elves and everything, and the elves live throughout all the ages, right? Gilgalad, he's like 3,500 years old. Obviously, you can't have that in Numenor.
No.
But so I'm interested in how they will do that, because for you as a viewer, I mean, I've worked in television, and I produced TV, and I produced shows, and the thing is, the viewer needs to, I mean, you have Galadriel, you will have the elves, you can relate to, because there's a world building and character building, and a hero's journey and whatnot. But with the Numenorians, it will be harder to feel with them and really get into the storyline, because these people die all the time. If you show
Mm-hmm.
a 3,000 years of the second age. But what I wanted to say, and what I find really interesting, and Tolkien even describes this in his book, how Numenor changed, how the city changed. So you were
Yeah.
talking about Armenelos. In the beginning, I really do think it was a beautiful rural, small city, because they started off with 6 or 9 whatever ships. They started with a few people, and then it grew and grew and grew. But they grew greedier as well. So and he says around the time of, don't I think it's Tarkiriatan, not sure, one of the kings, 13th, 14th, whatever king, Numenor changed, and people became more and more obsessed with death and endless life. And so they started to build shrines, temples. They even had something like necromancers. If you're a fan of Game of Thrones, you know that one guy, Maester, whatever his name was, I already forgot. But he also, yeah, like they tried to prolong lives. They tried, what he did
Yeah.
with a mountain and whatnot. So they Meister Purcell, I forgot it, whatever. And people will know in the comment section.
Yeah,
But
probably.
yeah, but they have necromancers there. They People want to become immortal. So I also want to see this side of Numenor. Yes, and this is very interesting. The more powerful they became, the less their lifespans lessened, and they became more powerful, and they became greedier. So actually, they became wealthier, but it completely shifted. And I want to see this shift in the, like you said, in politics, in
Yeah.
just the regular people living in Numenor. Like,
I
how was life there?
exact and of course the nature of Middle Earth has just recently come out.
I know. Still don't have the bloody
Yeah.
book. Do you have it?
I've ordered it, but it's still as of yet not arrived.
Same.
But I think minus dancing bears aside, it seems like it goes really it goes really in depth into into Numenor. I remember
I
even the
see.
description last year specifically mentioned going
Yeah.
into the culture and the
Yes.
society as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that you mentioned as well around just to become more greedier and
Mhm.
stuff like that. I think a big mission we have left through that so far is Sauron, him openly willingly becoming a hostage, coming back to Numenor, and I
Yeah.
think that's one of the few like causing factors in that
Yes.
happening because he's effectively saying that so far the Valar that twist him saying, hey, the Numenorians thinking, hey, why are the elves allowed to live so long?
Yeah.
And we have shortened lives, and in fact it is actually a gift having shorter lives and being mortal.
It's
But of
called the
course,
gift of
yeah,
men.
they call
Yes.
the gift of men, yeah. But someone's able to twist that. Of course, you have the Melkor
Mm.
worshipping, which will be really
I
really
love that. I want to
yeah.
see them people
Hmm.
burning alive. I'm sorry, people, but I want to.
Yeah, and that is the place I could also, of course, we're going to touchy subjects now, but that's the place I think if you had to say regarding
Yeah.
nudity and everything in Amazon show, if you had to ask me to pinpoint one specific place that you think that could work, I'd say
Yeah.
during the worshipping and
Yes. I think so too.
during
Yeah.
mhm,
You'll
mhm,
have
yeah,
like these feasts, like you
yeah,
imagine the some women dancing in veils, and I
yeah.
can this is the image I have in mind regarding Sauron's Temple of Doom and the
Ooh.
debauchery going on. Yeah, I
You
want to live
mentioned
there.
you mentioned a good point actually because not a lot of people know this because when people talk about and I don't want to go into the nudity thing too much, but when people used to mention it, they always talk about that casting call that came out that actually was false in the end around of having and was the nudity coordinator. But
Yeah.
originally around early 2020, Amazon sent out a legit casting call for a woman who could wear sheer clothing was the quote, so maybe that
Mm,
could go into what you're saying around, of course, those feasts, etc. But
yeah.
that's just a side point. But maybe I think that would fit rather into Numenor as well, unless
Yes.
we'll be getting really revealing elves, which I
No,
quite doubt. I don't think
they're
that
prim
would
and
yeah
proper throughout
yeah
all the ages. Although we
mhm,
learn apparently in the new book, they,
yeah
like they like other things as well. Anyway, good. So
yeah.
Numenor. Yeah.
So Numenor. So and I think the one I think as well is where I think originally asked me, and I think I've kind of avoided the question, not avoided it, but it's hard to come to the conclusion of where do you think we'll start with Numenor in the show.
Mm,
And I think I spoke around more about how it would like geographically and all the cities, but
yes.
the rain, um I think it would if the show is going to start earlier on in the second age and we're going to see well we know from the synopsis it's a relative time of peace, which
Yeah.
means I think before it's quite hard to describe because I think we could have Monastir or maybe Telperion around then. Maybe I think that is a good
But Telperion is when the war with the elves. So
yeah after,
Telperion, yeah, she lived in
yeah so sorry
1500.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying around, and this is where this comes into, and the reason you might be thinking why we said 1500 and stuff like that again later on, and I think maybe potentially Amazon will merge Numenorian rulers and kings.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking, and maybe
Yeah.
you have this queen that lives so much longer, for example,
Mhm.
and then maybe forge Monastir potentially into one character. I'm not sure, but I've
Yeah.
heard that theory other places as well. But that maybe that could deal. Maybe for example, I know it's a bit law breaking because, but then to the viewer we think, oh, they're the king. That's why, or they're the king or queen. They're the rulers. That's why they
Yeah.
live longer. Then because we did know everyone from Elros's line.
No.
He had like a longer. They had longer lifespans than the average Numenorian as well.
Yes.
But yeah, so I know it's a pretty hard thing to pinpoint where we will start, but I'd say just around before 1500, 1400 of the
Yeah.
second age, maybe going
I
back to
think so too.
1200. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's when we start in Newman. I think it's good that we finally come to a good point. But yeah, and I know I've come on the channel, but I'll pose this question on to you. Would you be fine
Mhm.
with Amazon just doing it? So you start the whole show is 5 seasons. You start in
Mhm.
12,000 or twelve
Yeah,
hundred, then you finish at the end of the War of the Elves and Sauron, and that's season 5
yeah,
is the Battle of the Gothlo, and then then the spin-off be around late Numenor, and that will solve the issue of having the Numenorians keep on like characters dying, etc., merging them. Would you rather see that potentially and have it start in just to have the show cover only a few hundred years?
yeah. That yes, because as I told you, I think it would be easier for the audience, to feel with a character, to go with him on a
Mm-hmm.
journey, to keep seeing the same character and not literally, okay, in episode 2 the next king dies. I think that is
Yeah,
really hard for the audience, and I'm not sure how much they can go against canon, because the annals of the kings is a thing. We know exactly what king ruled when. Tolkien gave us all the
yeah,
dates. So I'm not sure how this can work out. So I really like the idea you just mentioned, to have the other stuff in a spin-off and set that up later. I would be okay with season 1 to season 5 just covering the time, because you need a setup, right? You
yeah.
can't start literally at the forging of the rings, because everybody would be like,
No,
I
no.
mean, this is how Galadriel in a way started. She gave this prologue and said, whatever. But now we know there will be another prologue, of the Years of the Trees.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll mention that for a second as well. But I would be okay with that, to be fair, because then you don't have the problem. And a lot happens in 2 3. If you start, let's say 1400 or whatever, 1400 would be around Tar Surion, so I think the ninth king. Then comes Tar Teperian, and a lot happens in 300-400 years around the forging of the rings. The Nazgul, this is the only problem, appear though very late on. The Nazgul appeared 2200, so they literally appear for the first time 700 years later. So you can portray him turning all the Nazgul, which is very interesting with the rings, and then slowly, like becoming the Nazgul. So I
mm-hmm.
would I would love that, actually, because I don't want to see another king and another person every third episode, because they die. They have to die because of age. So yeah,
Yeah.
why not?
And And I think the main thing taken away from that as well is the fact that it is still a compelling story if it's starting
Yes.
before the forging and finishing around there. Around the One Ring, it shows viewers know if you say to an average person, the
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, I've seen the movies, yeah. Oh, the ring. Oh yeah, I'd probably say Frodo, Gandalf, and maybe
Yeah.
of course Aragorn. I know you love Viggo Mortensen, so I mentioned him in the
Oh
call
my.
as well.
The boys gave
Yeah.
me a room on our Discord server where I can just post fast Aragon memes.
Yeah. What was the phrase that we used or that was actually brought up?
I
Actually, no,
don't
we shouldn't.
know.
We shouldn't go into that. Actually, so I just realized what that means. Okay, so well, that the context around that. So, anyways, swiftly moving on.
Yeah.
So I think the main thing is the problem I see is that okay, you finish around 1700, late 1700. Okay,
Mhm.
we get to Imladris and Rivendell has been formed.
Yeah.
Okay, that happens at the end of season 2, and then you're gonna jump how many years? And then you go back to 3100. Then the
Yeah.
west starts to pick up against Sauron's in the east. Oh no, just attacking
Yeah.
port cities, stuff like that. He's just and
Yeah.
then we of course now we have Farazon, firstly, how did it go from Tar to R? That's why you are Farazon. That's first thing the viewer will say. And
Yeah.
then the second of all, see that's just come to my head right now. It's another thing that just it is it's interesting to see how they would do that. And I think Numenor's integral to that as well, because if Numenor was
Mhm.
in the story with the elves, we can do. And also another thing that we have the Grathurim, I think that's how you pronounce it in Middle Earth at the same time. They're also men and they're dwelling more in the um
Yes.
southwest. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imin
Yeah.
Hiriath and Edwaith. Then you got them. Are you gonna kill them all off as well? or the of course from the character leaks come up, we have a village elder, we've got a village healer, we've got a village leader. Are you are you going to? And another thing that potentially might be with that, we know this is going more into the show aspect of it. You
Mhm,
know Nazanin Bunyadi? Yeah, I think she's one of the more bigger actors on the cast.
mhm,
Is that
mhm.
safe to say?
You
Yeah, and
you
then
must tell me. I don't
yeah. Well,
know.
okay. Let's put it like this. She has basically the most followers out of all the cast members. I think.
Was she who we expected? Because when we had our discussion, so she could probably be like a queen from Umbar or or Harad, or was that
Well,
her?
we now
Yeah,
found out that she's playing. I've forgotten the character on the top of my head, but
yeah,
she is now a village. I think it's either a healer or a queen. So
yeah, yeah.
let's say, for example, that is Haradrim or
Hmm.
Grathurim, and she's
Hmm.
one of the top three biggest actors on the cast. So you're
Yeah.
gonna cut her off after two
No,
seasons,
no,
and you see
no.
that's where
You're
the
right.
logistics. And then
Yeah.
this where comes the third thing. Do they go a full Witcher?
With
That might,
with
yeah.
the timelines, please no, because that
I
was horrible. Even I read the books and I was confused.
Yeah, and I think, and the reason I'm mentioning all this because it comes back down to Numenor again.
Yeah, you're
How
right.
do you
Yeah,
settle that out? And Amazon can go in the anthology series route, but
yeah,
don't think any of us really want to see. And I know some people do, but realistically, you've
yeah,
you got so much story to tell, and I
yeah.
think
You do.
that's why Numenor mentions, and I going back again, we go back to that first question, when will we first see Numenor, and that's still many things still
Yeah,
left to
yeah,
be solved.
yeah.
So, and I think that's
Exciting
some,
times,
yeah,
fellowship.
indeed. And I will try my best to find out as much as I can
Yes, you're
around that.
our go-to man. So, yeah. Cool. Yes, I like that. So again, people, I mean, a lot of questions, but I think you see us speculating
Yeah.
with some, some we have information because there's Tolkien's law and there are the annals and there are dates and everything. But it needs to make sense for a viewer who is not like us, well versed in the law, and he must, this is what I said, there needs to be a hero's journey. People want to tune in the next week because they have a favorite character, or they want to see how this character behaves tomorrow, and all these things are important as well. And I think
Mm-hmm.
you might be onto something, that it might be a shorter time span and not 3,000
Yeah.
years covered in 5 seasons. And I would be
Mm-hmm.
totally down with that. And I think both of us would agree it's around the time 1,300 to, let it be 1,800 or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I think that would make sense. Still, the thing of Galadriel and the Years of the Trees, that is confirmed.
Ooh.
And I think it's Galadriel. I don't know what conclusion you came. I think it will be, because again, this is what plays into what does the viewer want to see. You need to give people who know the Lord of the Ring movies something they
Yeah.
can relate to, somebody they know. Obviously, it's not the same actress. It's not Kate, but it will be Galadriel. And I do think she introduced us to the world of the Lord of the Ring movies with her epic epilogue. And I do think it will be her again, telling the story of her people, telling the story of why did the elves leave this blessed realm. She's looking at two dead trees, and she will tell her story and her family's story of why they left, why did they even come to
Mm-hmm.
Middle Earth, how did this all come to pass. This is what I reckon will happen.
Mm-hmm. And I think if you remember that little speculation video that I did, do you want to go over that again with the Hellcrux saying that potentially
Yes, yeah. Mhm.
around that? Because if you guys, some of you don't know, I'll probably a lot of you won't, but early around around December,
Images.
October last year,
Yeah,
I released a picture of an icy
yeah,
mountainside set as ice, and it was
yeah,
during the first two episodes, which will be the two pilot episodes
yeah,
by J. Biona.
yeah.
And even back then, even though we didn't know anything about the second age, I mean
Yeah.
the first stage and the year of the trees, we
Yeah.
still thought, could this be a Galadriel flashback to the Helcaraxe?
Yes.
What
Yeah.
other snowy, icy places are in the Middle Earth? Of course, of course, I think the Redhorn Pass that could
Yeah.
go over that as well, but mainly the Helcaraxe, and of course, it was at the same studios that at the time
Yeah.
Morpho Clark had worked on,
Yeah.
and also who is Galadriel for you, those of you who don't know. And then we
Mhm.
have then confirmation that the first two episodes, or
Yeah.
mainly the first episode, but that means the first two because Bayona
They'll be
is a hand.
connected.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're connected. Is going to have this either flashback or prologue. So either way, I was thinking, if we put two and two together,
Yeah.
could it potentially be? And also, Morphy Clark mentioned doing a lot of physical work during around that time in an interview,
Yeah.
and maybe that's the
Yes.
physical. So I was thinking, like having this wind machine just blow at you when you're trying to cross it, and then
It's
so yeah,
like they cross the Caradras
yeah.
when the fellowship basically crossed that. It is so gruesome. It is elves died there. People, a lot of elves died. Turgon's wife died. His daughter almost died. We know a lot of elves died, and you see that in battles, but not during a journey. Just imagine crossing the Alps on foot.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I wouldn't recommend
Yeah,
it. So,
please
and
don't.
as you said, Galadriel is the one who can connect everything. She is
Yeah.
the elf that was born in the Undying Lands and then went to Middle Earth. And then we still have her in the Third Age. Yes, we have Círdan, but he was never in the Undying Lands. So she is the only elf that can tell us all these stories. Gil-galad, Elrond, all these people were born later in Middle Earth. um, so she is the connector to all this. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it will start with her. It makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that we. I think I'm on the same lines of you as it being most likely Galadriel as well, and I think, of course, in the picture itself, the person had a bun at the back of their hair
Mhm.
tied up. So,
Yeah,
and then, and I remember talking to Lexi about this a while ago. She mentioned Galadriel having, well, she having her hair tied up
the
for a bit as
braid.
well.
Yes.
Yeah, the braid. Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then so yeah, so I think all in all, if you put things together, I
Yeah.
think um that it does make sense that it would be a Galadriel, but it's interesting nonetheless that we got the first image is of we see the
Yeah.
two trees as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, really
Well,
exciting times.
they like these kind of
Hmm.
teasers, us showing the maps with not saying, they didn't say anything, but they want you to dig into the lore. Why did they show
Yeah.
these maps? People who just have seen the movies needed to pick up a book, needed to Google, needed to find out, what is Amazon telling me here? What is this? I don't know. What are they talking about? What is the second age even? So this is exactly what they're doing again. They want you to
Hmm.
look up, what are these trees? Who can this person be? What age is this? This is what they want to do. They want you to understand, you the viewer who doesn't have all this background information like us, who's just like, oh, obviously these are the two trees,
Yeah.
hello. They want people to buy books again. I work in
Hmm.
marketing, so I understand it. Buy the books, buy the toys,
Yeah.
buy additional books, buy second liter, like buy
Yeah.
everything to understand what, to be prepared, what we're dropping next year.
Yeah.
I think
After
it's a,
the yeah. After the Lord of the Rings movies came out, the books apparently had, of course, it was
yeah,
always upward growth, but then it's a spike. Do you think
yeah.
could the same happen to Silmarillion? I'm not sure if you could have, but do
Oh
you think
my
that could be
god,
a
it's,
that
yeah,
could
it's a
be
bit harder to read, but
yeah,
maybe
I
some
know.
people,
Yeah.
yeah, some people will. It happened to The Witcher, right? And to the Game of Thrones books. Like, I remember The Witcher, I had The Witcher books. I read them, like, a friend of mine, she's Polish, she recommended to me years ago. And so I had the books, but I remember friends of mine, they wanted to read the books. And they were not even available because the demand was as high after the show dropped. And Amazon
Yeah.
is clever, they're not making money with the show, they're paying money for the show.
They were
They're
they were
making
originally a
money
big
with the,
website.
yeah, they're making money with the advertisement, with the toys, with everything else.
Hmm. And think back to the maps as well. I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't a trick in some way, because if you remember to the not a trick because it is going to be in the show, but if
Yeah.
you get what I'm trying to say, because remember to the map releases, the first, second, third, and fourth made it seem like we were getting third age. The third
Yes.
age, the fourth map that was sent, that was shown us, had
Yeah.
Moria in it, which was named in the third age. So
Yeah.
it seemed like it was. Then um, of course, I never get a pronunciation of this right. Lola Lindorenan. I
Yeah.
think I
Yeah.
butchered that. So it's possible to say that said. So that was too early to be as well. So and
Yeah.
then Kalinardon, that was of course before Rohan as
Yeah.
well. So then they
Numenor.
were
Yeah.
thinking, so on the fight, so we're going into the fifth map, who are going to think, okay, this is going to be a fully third age map. Then you go into it, then you see Numenor, and you're like, what? Wait a
Yeah.
second. And then maybe I was thinking they've done that in their marketing once. Could they be doing it twice?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's I think around the so yeah, I think all that we were hoping that with a release from Amazon would answer more questions, but I think it's raised more. And I
Yes.
think this makes it even a bit more frustrating but fun at the same time, as that means more
Yeah.
speculation,
Yeah.
which is always a good thing.
Yes, this is, this is what keeps us going,
Mm-hmm.
especially you. So,
Yeah,
yay. So good. I really enjoyed this. And yeah, I was a guest at your channel. I loved our
yeah.
discussion then. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we're definitely doing something in the future again. Do you have any last, I think we speculated a lot today. Do you have anything last you want to mention for this map? I know you always speak of your expectations, but in one sentence, what are you most excited about, maybe seeing this map? So what is what you want to see in the season 1, season 2, season 5,
It's a one sentence.
in the series? Oh, you can you
Yeah,
I give you
the
2 sentences because
two
it's you.
sentences. Thank you. It would be seeing the height of a region
Yeah.
and Ostinethil with the connection with Khazad-dûm. That's the
Yeah.
sentence.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking most excited. That's what I'm most excited for,
Yeah.
to see that. And
Yeah.
of
I
course the
think.
new politics as well. But no more than one sentence. But it don't matter.
Yeah, no, I agree. I
Yeah.
really do think a region will be, and I think I'm a very visual person, right? And I do think if you see Linden, it will be like, if you talk about color grading, if you talk about how they present it, it will be very elfy like, right? It will be close to the waters, first of all. And the nature there is beautiful. Imagine something like Imladris Lothlorien image wise, something like that. Very a
Hmm.
lot of nature and everything. And then Eregion will be a complete contrast. I imagine Eregion a bit like the elvish Mordor. Would you agree? Do you know what I mean? Like fires, and it's very different to, I think, visually as how they portray, the good elves, basically.
Yeah. Maybe seeing that contrast as well would
Yes.
be really, really
Hmm.
interesting, especially
Hmm.
for us as well, to
Yeah.
know in the prior history and context around all that. Hmm.
Yeah. Good. So, again, thank you for joining me here. And people, again, I can only recommend, if you like to know everything about the show, but you also have your podcast with people. You mentioned Lexi, who we both
Hmm.
love and adore.
Yeah. Hmm.
But you also have stuff like where you talk about more about the law and about history and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And it drops every 2 weeks, right? I think you have
Every
the.
yeah, every
Mhm.
2 weeks. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
exactly.
normally on Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you cover a lot. You don't just
Hmm.
cover show informations and
No,
spoilers.
no, no.
And yeah, so everybody,
Yeah.
please follow the lovely Fellowship of Fans. And yeah, so what is next for you? What will drop? Because this drops before
Hmm.
anything you will probably drop. So what is next for you? What is your next video
So,
or project?
so I all I would say is the next two second aid shows, which is the one I do exclusively
Yes,
around the show, they're probably going to be the two biggest ones I've done. That's all
mhm,
I'm going to leave with. And
good.
so yeah.
Good.
That's
Good.
all I'm going to have to say for around
Okay.
that 6,
So
and that's
watch
around
this
the
space.
amateur
Watch
show.
his space,
Watch
people.
it, space. A really good way to put it.
Yay. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect. So thank you very much again. Everything will be
yeah,
linked down below. It was very, very lovely. And
indeed.
we'll do this soon again. And I'll definitely come on your channel again, inviting myself here, but you know how I am.
No, you don't have
Um
to invite yourself. You'd come on anyways. No worries. And also, like to say thank you for coming to me in a really fun and enjoyable conversation. I think the thing I like the most, you've speculated and had lots of different theories, which I think I think
Yes.
while also looking at all the other places, which I
Yeah.
hope it was enjoyable as well to see all these different opinions going into the show, and
Yeah.
also the different ideas around how the show could actually be around
Yeah.
having a certain time period, longer
Yeah.
time period. So yeah, a lot to
Yeah.
discuss, as
Yeah.
me and Helen have, I think, quite well shown.
Yes, we did. Okay. So thank you, my lovelies, for listening and tuning in. And please leave comments and likes because this is very important for tiny channels like mine. And I want to invest. I mentioned this in my comment, whatever that section is called. I want to invest more in my channel. There will be 2 videos a week. And yeah, stay tuned.
Perfect.
Bye bye, my lovelies.
See you.